What's up, YouTube people? Shaggy the Writer. We got 50 minutes, so I'm gonna kind of dive in kind of quick. Shouts out to Against the World G. Shouts out to all the five folks over at Discord. Shouts out to r slash alternate history of and r slash Virgin versus Chad in particular. Today we're talking about the man who is literally the basic for all writers in this modern day and age. And I think it's going to be pretty awesome because, as I mentioned in the description, I'm always open to learn new things about the craft. But, yes, we shall continue. Shall continue. The first forward, in the early 90s, it might have been 1992, but it's hard to remember when you're having a good time. I joined a rock and roll band composed mostly of writers. The rock bottom remainders were the brainchild of Kathy Kamen Goldmark, a book publicist and musician from San Francisco. The group included Dave Barry on lead guitar, Riley Peterson on bass, Barbara Kingsolver on keyboards, Robert Fulgham on mandolin, and me on rhythm guitar. There was also a trio of chick singers a la the Dixie Cups, made up, usually, of Kathy, Tad Bartimus, and Amy Tan. The group was intended as a one-shot deal. We would play 2 shows at the American Booksellers Convention, get a few laughs, recapture our misspent youth for 3 or 4 hours, then go our separate ways. It didn't happen that way because the group was never quite broke up. We found that we liked playing together too much to quit, and with a couple of ringer musicians on sax and drums, plus in the early days our music guru Al Cooper at the heart of the group, we sounded pretty good. You'd pay to hear us. Not a lot, not YouTube or E Street band prices, but maybe what the old-timers call roadhouse money. We took the group on tour, wrote a book about it. My wife took the photos and danced whenever the spirit took her, which was quite often, and continued to play now and then, sometimes as the remainder, sometimes as Raymond Burr's legs. The personnel comes and goes. Columnist Mitch Albom has replaced Barbara on the keyboards, and Al doesn't play with the group anymore because he and Kathy don't get along. But the cores remain: Kathy, Amy, Ridley, Dave, Mitch Albom, and me, plus Josh Kelly on drums, and Erasimo Paulo on the sax. We do it for the music, but we do it for the companionship as well. We like each other, and we like having a chance to talk sometimes about the real job and the day people are always telling us not to quit. We are writers. We never ask one another where we get our ideas. We know we don't know. One night while we were eating Chinese before a gig in Miami Beach, I asked Amy if there was any one question she was never asked during the Q&A that follows most every writer's talk. That question you never got to answer when you're standing in front of a group of author-struck fans and pretending like you don't put your pants leg on one leg at a time, like everybody else. Amy paused, thinking over it very carefully, and then said, "No one ever asked about the language." I owe an immense debt of gratitude for saying that. I've been playing with the idea of writing a little book about writing for a year or more at the time, but it held back because I didn't trust my own motivations. Why did I want to write about writing? What made me think I had anything worth saying? The easy answer is that somebody who sold as many books of fiction as I have must have something worthwhile to say about writing it. But the easy answer isn't always the truth. Colonel Sanders sold a hell of a lot of fried chicken, but I'm not sure anyone wants to know how he made it. If I was going to be presumptuous enough to tell people how to write, I felt there had to be a better reason than my popular success. Put another way, I didn't want to write a book, even a short one like this, that would leave me feeling like either a literary gas bag or a transcendental asshole. There are enough of those books and those writers on the market already, thanks. But Amy was right. Nobody ever asks about language. They ask about the Leos and the Updikes and the Stritons, but they don't ask about popular novelists. Yet many of us pros also care about the language in our humble way, and care passionately about the art and craft of telling stories on paper, What follows is an attempt to put down briefly and simply how I came to the craft, what I know about it now, and how it's done. It's about the day job, it's about the language. This book is dedicated to Amy Tan, who told me in a very simple and direct way that it was okay to write it. I'm in love already. But he had to write a second forward because this is a short book because most books are about writing are filled with bullshit. These are literally his words. I love Stephen King so much. Fiction writers present company included don't understand very much about what they do. I agree. Not why it works when it's good, not why it doesn't when it's bad. I figured the shorter the book, the less bullshit. One notable exception to the bullshit rule is The Elements of Style by William Strunk Jr. and E.B. White. He shares my birthday. I love E.B. White. There is little or no detectable bullshit in that book. Of course, it's short at 85 pages. It's much shorter than this one. I'll tell you right now that every aspiring writer should read The Elements of Style. Rule 17 in the chapter titled Principles of Composition is omit needless words. I will try to do that here. Third forward, because why not have three forwards when you're writing a book about writing? One rule of the road not directly stated elsewhere in the book, the editor is always right. The corollary is that no writer will take all of his or her editor's advice, for all have sinned and fallen short of editorial perfection. Put another way, to write is human, to edit is divine. Chuck Farrell edited this book, as he has so many of my novels. As usual, Chuck, you were divine. Okay, CV. I was stunned by Mary Carr's memoir, The Liars Club, not just by its veracity, its beauty, and by her delightful grasp of the vernacular, but by its totality. She is a woman who remembers everything about her early years. I'm not that way. I lived an odd, herky-jerky childhood, raised by a single parent who moved around a lot in my earliest years, and who, I'm not completely sure of this, may have farmed my brother and me out to one of her sisters for a while, because she was economically or emotionally unable to cope with us for a time. Perhaps she was only chasing our father, who piled up all sorts of bills and then did a run out when I was 2 and my brother David was 4. If so, she never succeeded in finding him. My mom, Nellie Ruth Pillsbury King, was one of America's early liberated women, but not by choice. Mary Carr presents her childhood in an almost unbroken panorama. Mine is a fogged out landscape, from which occasional memories appear like isolated trees, the kind that look as if they might like to grab you and eat you. What follows are some of those memories, plus assorted snapshots from the somewhat more coherent days of my adolescence and young manhood. This is not an autobiography. It is rather a kind of curriculum vitae, my attempt to show how one writer was formed, not how one writer was made. I don't believe writers can be made, either by circumstances or by self-will, although I did believe those things once. The equipment comes with the original package. Yet it is by no means unusual equipment. I believe large numbers of people have at least some talent as writers and storytellers, and that those talents can be strengthened and sharpened. If I didn't believe that, writing a book like this would be a waste of time. This is how it was for me. That's all, a disjointed growth process in which ambition, desire, luck, and a little talent all played a part. Don't bother trying to read between the lines, and don't look for a through line. There are no lines, only snapshots, most out of focus. 1. My earliest memory is of imagining I was someone else, imagining that I was in fact the Ringling Brothers Circus strongman. This was at my Aunt Ethelyn and Uncle Orrin's house in Durham, Maine. Always Maine with his books, too. That explains it. My aunt remembers this quite clearly and says I was 2.5 or maybe 3 years old. I found a cement cinder block in the corner of the garage, and I managed to pick it up. I carried it slowly across the garage's smooth cement floor, except in my mind I was dressed in an animal skin singlet, probably a leopard skin, and carrying the cinder block across. the center ring. The vast crowd was silent. The brilliant blue spotlight marked my remarkable progress. Their wondering faces told the story. They had never seen such an incredibly strong kid. "And he's only two," someone muttered in disbelief. Unbeknown to me, wasps had constructed a small nest in the lower half of the cinder block. One of them, perhaps pissed off at being located, flew out and stung me on the ear. The pain was brilliant, like a poisonous inspiration. It was the worst pain I've ever suffered in my short life. But it would only held two spots for a few seconds. When I dropped the cinder block, I won barefoot, mashing all five toes. I forgot all about the wasp. I can't remember if I was taken to the doctor, and neither can my Aunt Ethel and Uncle Orrin, to whom the evil cinder block surely belonged, is almost 20 years dead. But she remembers the sting, the mashed toes, my reaction. "How you howled, Stephen," she said. "You were certainly in a fine voice that day." A year or so later, my mother, my brother, and I were in West Pierre, Wisconsin. I don't know why. Another of my mother's sisters, Cal, a WAAC beauty queen during World War II, lives in Wisconsin with her congenial beer drinking husband, and maybe Mom had moved to be near them. If so, I don't remember seeing much of the Weimers. Any of them, actually. My mother was working, but I can't remember what her job was either. I want to say it was a bakery she worked in, but I think she came later when we moved to Connecticut to live near her sister Lois and her husband. No beer for Fred, and not much in the way of conviviality either. He was a crew-cut daddy who was proud of driving his convertible with the top up. God knows why. During the stream of babysitters during our Wisconsin period, I don't know if they left because David and I were a handful, or because they found better paying jobs, or because my mother insisted on higher standards and they were willing to rise to. All I know is that there were a lot of them. The only one I remember with any clarity is Elua, or maybe her name was Belua. She was a teenager and she was as big as a house and she laughed a lot. Elua Belua had a wonderful sense of humor. Even at 4 I could recognize that, but it was a dangerous sense of humor. There seemed to be a potential thunderclap hidden inside each hand patting, butt rocking, head tossing outburst of glee. When I see those hidden camera sequences where real life babysitters and nannies just all of a sudden wind up and clout the kids, it's my days with Elua Belua that I always think of. Was she as hard on my brother David as she was on me? I don't know. He's not in any of these pictures. Besides, he would have been at less risk from Hurricane Elua Belua's dangerous winds. At 6, he would have been in the first grade and off the gunnery range for most of the day. Elua Belua would be on the phone laughing with someone and beckon me over. She would hug me, tickle me, get me laughing, and then, still laughing, go upside my head hard enough to knock me down. She would tickle me with her bare feet until we were both laughing again. Elua Belua was prone to farts, the kind that are both loud and smelly. Sometimes she was so afflicted, so she would throw me on the couch, drop her wool-skirted butt on my face, and let loose. "How!" she'd cry in high glee. It was like being buried in marsh gas fireworks. I remember the dark, the sense that I was suffocating, and I remember laughing because while it was happening was sort of horrible, it was also sort of funny. In many ways, Elo Bello prepared me for literary criticism. After having a 200-pound babysitter fart in your face and yell "pow," the village voice holds a few terrors. I don't know what happened to other sitters, but Elo Bello was fired. It was because of the eggs. One morning, Elo Bello fried me an egg for breakfast. I ate it and asked for another one. Elo Bello fried me a second egg and then asked if I wanted another one. She had a look in her eye that said, "Don't you dare eat another one, Stevie." So I asked her for another one, and so on. I stopped after 7, I think. 7 is the number that sticks in my mind and quite clearly. Maybe we ran out of eggs, maybe I cried off, or maybe Ella Bella got scared. I don't know, but it probably wasn't good. The game ended at 7. 7 eggs is quite a few, especially for a 4-year-old. Felt alright for a while, and then I yarked all over the floor. Ella Bella laughed, and I went upside my head. Then she shoved me into the closet and locked the door. Pow, she locked me in the bathroom. She might have saved her job, but she didn't. As for me, I didn't really mind being in the closet. It was dark, but it smelled of my mother's perfume, and there was a comforting line of light under the door. I crawled back to the closet, to the back. My mother's coats and dresses brushed all along my back. I began to belch, long, loud belches that burned like fire. I don't remember being sick to my stomach, but I must have been, because when I opened my mouth to let out another burning belch, I yarked again instead, all over my mother's shoes. That was the end of Ella Bella. When my mother came home from work that day, the babysitter was fast asleep on the couch, and little Stevie was locked in the closet, fast asleep with half-digested fried eggs drying in his hair. What's up, Dr. Wave? We're reading some Stephen King memoirs. His third memory. Our stay in West Pierre was neither long nor successful. We were evicted from our third-floor apartment when a neighbor spotted my 6-year-old brother crawling around on the new roof and called the police. I don't know where my mother was when this happened. I don't know where the babysitter of the week was either. I only know that I was in the bathroom, standing with my bare feet on the heater, watching to see if my brother would fall off the roof or make it back into the bathroom okay. He made it back. He is now 55 and living in New Hampshire. Based. Number 4. When I was 5 or 6, I asked my mother if she had ever seen anyone die. Yes, she said. She had seen one person die and had heard another one. I asked how you could hear a person die, and she told me that it was a girl who had dropped off Prout's Neck in the 1920s and drowned. She said the girl swam out past the rip, couldn't get back in, and began screaming for help. Several men tried to reach her, but the day's rip had developed a vicious undertow, and they were forced back. In the end, they could only stand around tourists and townies, the teenager who became my mother among them, waiting for a rescue boat that never came, and listening to a girl that screamed with all her strength until she gave out and went under. Her body washed up in New Hampshire, my mother said. I asked how old the girl was. My mom said she was 14. Then she read me a comic book and packed me off to bed. On some other day, she told me about the one she saw, a sailor who jumped off the roof of a Braemore hotel in Portland, Maine, and landed in the street. He splattered, my mother said in the most matter-of-fact tone. She paused and added, the stuff that came out of him was green. I've never forgotten it. It makes 2 of us, Mom. Most of the 9 months I should have spent in first grade I spent in bed. My problem started with the measles, a perfectly ordinary case, but then steadily got worse. I had bout after bout of what I mistakenly thought was called striped throat. I lay in bed drinking cold water and imagining my throat in alternating stripes of red and white. This was probably not so far wrong. At some point my ears became involved, and one day my mother called a taxi. She did not drive, and took me to the doctor, too important to make house calls, an ear specialist. For some reason I got the idea that this sort of doctor was called an audiologist. I didn't care whether he specialized in ears or assholes. I had a fever of 104 degrees, and each time I swallowed, pain lit up the sides of my face like a jukebox. The doctor looked in my ears, spending most of his time, I think, on the left one. Then he laid me down on his examining table. Lift up a minute, Stevie, his nurse said, and put a large absorbent cloth, it might have even been a diaper, under my head, so my cheek rested on it when I lay back down. I should have guessed that something was rotten in Denmark. Who knows, maybe I did. There was a sharp smell of alcohol. The clank as the ear doctor opened his sterilizer. I saw the needle in his hand. It looked as long as a ruler in my school pencil box and intense. The ear doctor smiled reassuringly, spoke the lie for which doctors should immediately be jailed, time of incarceration to be doubled when the lie is told to a child. Relax, Stevie, this won't hurt. I believed him. He slipped the needle into my ear and punctured my eardrum with it. Pain was beyond anything I've ever felt since. The only thing close was the first month of recovery after being struck by a van in the summer of 1999. That pain was longer in duration but not so intense. The puncturing of my eardrum was pain beyond the world. I screamed. There was a sound inside my head, a loud hissing sound. Hot fluid ran out of my ear. It was as if I had started to cry out of the wrong hole. God knows I was crying enough out of the right ones by then. I raised my streaming face and looked, unbelieving, at the ear doctor and the ear doctor's nurse. Then I looked at the cloth the nurse had spread over the third of the exam table. It had a big wet patch on it. There were fine tendrils of yellow pus on it as well. There, the ear doctor said, patting my shoulder. You were very brave, Stevie, and it's all over. The next week my mother called another taxi. We went back to the ear doctor's, and I found myself once more lying on my side with an absorbent square cloth under my head. The ear doctor once again produced the smell of alcohol, a smell I still associate, as I suppose many people do, with pain and sickness and terror, and with it the long needle. He once again assured me that it wouldn't hurt, and I once more believed him. Not completely, but enough to be quiet while the needle slid into my ear. It did hurt, almost as much as the first time, in fact. The smooching sound in my head was louder, too. This time it was Giant's kitchen, sucking face and rotating tongues, as we used to say. There, the ear doctor's nurse said, and when it was over I lay there, crying, in a puddle of watery pus. It only hurts a little, and you don't want to be deaf, do you? Besides, it's all over. I believed that for about 5 days, and then another taxi came. Oh my God. Uh, we went back to the ear doctor's. I remember the cab driver telling my mother that he was going to pull over and let us out, if she couldn't shut the kid up. Once again, it was me on the exam table with the diaper under my head, and my mom out in the waiting room with the magazine she was probably incapable of reading, or so I like to imagine. Once again, the pungent smell of alcohol, and the doctor turning to me with the needle that looked as long as my school ruler. Once more the smile, the approach, the assurance that this time it wouldn't hurt. Since the repeated eardrum lancings when I was 6, one of my life's firmest principles has been this: fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times, shame on both of us. The third time on the ear doctor's table, I struggled and screamed and thrashed and fought. Each time the needle came near the side of my face, I knocked it away. Finally, the nurse called my mother in from the waiting room, and the two of them managed to hold me for long enough for the doctor to get his needle in. I screamed so long and so loud that I can still hear it. In fact, I think that in some deep valley of my head, that last scream is still echoing. Ooh. Oh man, I just need a minute because I need something to drink. Thanks for hitting that like button, Octawave. I see people showing up hitting that like button. Oh man. Number 6, in a dull, cold month, not long after that, would have been January, February of 1954. If I got the sequence right, the taxi came again. This time the specialist wasn't an ear doctor, but a throat doctor. Once again, my mother sat in the waiting room. Once again, I sat on the examining table with the nurse hovering nearby. And once again, there was the sharp smell of alcohol, an aroma that still has the power to double my heartbeat in the space of 5 seconds. All that appeared this time, however, was some sort of throat swab. It stung and it tasted awful, but after the ear doctor's long needle, it was a simple walk in the park. The throat doctors donned an interesting gadget that went around his head on a strap. It had a mirror in the middle and a bright, fierce light that shone out of it like a third eye. He looked down my gullet for a long time, urging me to open wider until my jaws creaked. We did not put needles in me, and so I loved him. After a while, he allowed me to close my mouth and summon my mother. Problem is his tonsils, the doctor said. They look like a cat clawed them. They'll have to come out. At some point after that, I remember being wheeled under bright lights. A man in a white mask bent over me. He was standing at the head of the table, and I was lying on 1953 and 1954 were my years for lying on tables. And to me, he looked upside down. Stephen, he said, can you hear me? I said I could. I want you to breathe deep, he said. When you wake up, you can have all the ice cream you want. He lowered a gadget over my face, and the eye of the memory was like an outboard motor. I took a deep breath and everything went black. When I woke up, I was indeed allowed all the ice cream I wanted, which was a fine joke on me because I didn't want any. My throat felt swollen and fat, but it was better than the old needle in the ear trick. Oh yeah, anything would have been better than the needle in the ear trick. Take my toss if you have to, with steel bird cage in my leg if you must. But God save me from the audiologist. I don't know why I'm so hot. I need a moment to get some water. I don't feel right. Oh God, I really don't feel right. Oh God, I wish I felt better. Oh my God. People give me. I got my second vaccine today, and this is the worst I felt. And it just hit out of nowhere. It was by far the worst I felt, and like I said, it just hit out of nowhere. Oh God, I feel like I just experienced like a super high grade fever for like 30 seconds. Oh my God. Oh. Oh my god. That sounds like anything I've ever experienced before for sure. Oh my god. Whew. Man, I hope these vaccines work because this shit's crazy. Wow, guys. I'll be honest with you. This only makes me more skeptical about what's in these damn vaccines. And I don't want to discourage people who need it from getting one. Because we need to stop the spread of COVID. But oh my god, I don't know what just happened to me. Mm, mm. I might be done reading for now. I don't know. Just let me get another minute and I'll see how I feel. Whew. Man, I don't know if I can do this again. Oh, people normally don't even have that many symptoms. But that was something else. Holy moly. Oh yeah, we're calling it a night. We're calling it a night. God, I'm sorry. That's the best I can do. That's the best I can do. I think I need to head home. Thanks to the library staff for being awesome as always. Thanks to Against the World G. I hope you're doing well. Thanks to Rock King and Brittany. And thanks to Octawave for showing up. We might have to add some people to my associated channels. Hope everyone has a great evening. Y'all love Rastafari. One love. Full faith. NFA. We out here.